You can't help but wonder whether Prince Harry is experiencing an identity crisis as you watch his new documentary, Heart of Invictus. You can't stay away for very long. Harry and Meghan are back on the cultural scene after the highly publicized cancellation of their $20 million podcast deal with Spotify. They are seeking to forge new identities for themselves as they make their way through what they believe to be the real world. This time, their son-inspired Arkwell Productions, which signed a $50 million agreement with Netflix in 2020, is back on the streaming service. They've already released Live to Lead, an interview program with notable world leaders and Harry and Meghan, which was billed as an intimate, authentic representation of their life, with a few enticing tidbits about the royals tossed in, like Greta Thunberg and Jacinda Ardern. They now present Heart of Invictus, a 5-part documentary about the 2014 Prince Harry founded Invictus Games, an athletic competition for wounded and disabled veterans. On first viewing, Heart of Invictus appears to be a respectable documentary with attractive characters at its core, including Tom Folwell, a British Army veteran who served in Iraq and Afghanistan, and Yulia Terapeevska, a volunteer paramedic in Ukraine. The Duke, though on camera, takes a backseat at least here. Harry has expertise and personal experience, which is preferable to the evil 2022 podcast archetypes. See What They Did There, hosted by Meghan Markle, in which she trotted forth cliches about authenticity and self-care with choices from her amazing connections list. And Invictus, he appears to be genuinely passionate about games because they have helped a lot of people. However, his career puts the multi in multi-hyphenate: soldier, father, spouse, podcaster, memoirist, documentary maker, philanthropist, duke, enormous legend. It makes you question whether he is going through an identity crisis. When he is in front of the camera during a segment of the show, the interviewer asks, apparently satisfied with themselves, "What do you do?" He responds, "One wears lots of hats," with a hint of surprise. He's just Harry. He's not used to being asked this. The real question is whether any of them fit, and the one he's wearing right now, producing Netflix documentaries, seems a little bit too small. Every pop singer under the sun appears to have done one in recent years, so he is hardly the first superstar to make movies about the subjects that have affected him the most emotionally. To silence the critics, Harry does a good job of staying out of the way of the show, with the exception of the currently contentious allegation that the British press underreports the heroic individuals who sacrificed their lives and limbs for their nation. In 2008, when a leak disclosed the location of his station and put him and his fellow soldiers in risk, he was withdrawn from the front lines of Afghanistan, except for the hardly disguised resentment that he had been. However, aside from that, and the compelling tales, you do question why this is a 5-hour job in light of some of the individuals on it. The deal is the obvious response. This must be really, really good television for $50 million. Unfortunately, it still needs work. Since the Invictus Games have been a long-standing success, the documentary lacks a lot of urgency in demonstrating to others what his aim is. Does anything come to mind? You can see why someone might wind up having some difficulty with external validation if they were born as someone who half the world worships by default and half the population believes is completely meaningless. You can understand why someone would wind up having some troubles with external validation when half of the population believes is completely meaningless and the other half worships by default. Harry and Meghan have had to demonstrate that they don't require that structure in the first place, and that they are creatives deserving of respect ever since they departed the royal family in 2020. Historically, they have done this using their own story, which is obviously quite engaging, but since it has already aired out of juice, they had to use different content. Thus, their content is the result of a mix of creative desperation and identity searching. The Wall Street Journal stated that the pair were known for big ideas, subpar execution in a story about the Spotify partnership's demise. This immediately brings to mind Alan Partridge dictating notes into his dictaphone. Anyone up for some monkey tennis hit? Seems that being bound by a multi-million-dollar deal with Netflix is not all that unlike from being a member of the royal family. In both scenarios, you are repeatedly pressed to demonstrate your value and significance to hordes of incensed people, while only receiving praise from those who already regard you as brilliant and receiving an unbelievable sum of money regardless of what you accomplish. As